if I were advising or helping to develop an emerging artist, I would say write as many songs as you possibly can. Write every day, write as much as you possibly can, and don't invest a single dime on production and marketing until you know that you've evolved enough that it's
You're
worthy
ready.
of, yeah, that it's worthy of being shared.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Release Day Series podcast. I am your host, Alex Heward. I hope everybody's finding ways to keep cool out there in this blistering hot summer and finding some time to take away from their busy lifestyles to decompress and chill out a little bit. We just had a couple weeks vacation ourselves, my wife and I and our two boys. So it's not really been vacation, but more so time away from work and keeping the boys busy, which is exactly what my wife planned for us for these last 2 weeks, and it's been great. It's been awesome to have new experiences with them, but I'm also incredibly tired and maybe looking forward to going back to work just a little bit. But I'm also really looking forward to sharing this conversation that I have with Desiree Dorion with you, the Indigenous country artist from Dauphin, Manitoba. She released her latest album, That's How I Know, on February 24th, 2023, and that is the basis of our conversation today. We talk about a couple of the songs on the album, Wouldn't That Be Fun, which is a super fun song that she kind of breaks down for us, as well as a really serious and thought-provoking song called Love You to Death. She gives us a bit of background on that one, and I think it'll be, the story behind why she chose to go ahead and write it and release it is incredibly inspiring, and I hope that you walk away inspired just from that story alone. But we dive into something really interesting too on the topic of food sovereignty and what she's teaching her daughters out there in Manitoba about hunting and foraging and just appreciating finding our own food. And it's a really also inspiring and interesting conversation to kick things off. And lastly, we talk about Indigenous History Month. It was June 22nd when we recorded this episode. So we talk about Desiree's involvement with the Downie Wenjack Fund as a ambassador for Downie Wenjack, and what they're doing and what inspired her to get involved there, and just a great organization to look up, and that link will be in the show notes there. And we talk about the importance of celebrating Indigenous history and Indigenous culture, and she has some absolutely incredible and inspiring things to say along those lines. So that is near the end of the chat that I really hope you enjoy listening to, and again walk away from feeling not only educated or not only inspired but educated as well. Now, don't forget, you can find all of our podcast episodes on our website, releasedayseries.com. You'll also find our limited video series and a place to sign up for our newsletter, where you will receive emails with the release of every new episode, so you never miss a release. Broadcasting from the traditional territory of the Williams Treaties First Nations, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Inuit, and Métis peoples, this is my conversation with Desiree Dorion. Desiree, you might be the first person I think that I'm talking to from Manitoba. Are you out in Manitoba right now?
I'm in Manitoba.
What? So silly. I've never been to Manitoba. What? How is it this time? How is Dauphin, Manitoba this time of year?
Well, we are just 1 week away from our country music festival. So,
okay.
Yeah, but to be honest, we're a community right now in mourning. I mean, we just had a massive tragic accident that impacted 16 families fatally, and yeah, so we're a little bit of a somber town right now, but we're still moving ahead with Country Fest, and yeah, the weather's warming up, which is nice, and yeah, I mean, we've had a really incredible spring. It's been 30 above almost every day in May, which is almost unheard of. But yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes when I hear Manitoba, it's cold. So that's it's usually pretty cold. But yeah, you're right. You're also a town in mourning there, and hey, I guess if there's one thing to bring people together, it's music, right? So it's almost
absolutely
that take that, the good with it, and the fact that, hopefully that music festival is what can, unite everyone, and also, put a little bit of that out of their mind just for an hour or so, eh?
Put a little bit of joy back in. That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's been really awesome listening to your latest album. That's How I Know. It has been one. It's kind of like, I put out a lot of albums for the kid test. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and if I could put on an album and they either don't tell me to turn it off or they tell me to turn it up, that's how I know
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that.
I like
But
what you did there.
yeah, I actually, honestly, I didn't set that up. It just came to me, I swear. And they told me to turn it up. They told me to turn it up,
Yay!
and
Yay!
it's been really, really fun to listen to. Not only a singer songwriter, you're a mother as well, and also a lawyer. So you keep yourself pretty busy, throughout the
Yeah.
year.
I wear a few hats.
Does any of that play into your music? Being a lawyer, anything in that? Obviously, being a mother, I know. Obviously, even just thinking back to your other album, "Break the Chain," that's an amazing song, which I know we're not here to talk about, but
Yeah.
it is a fantastic song that
Thank you.
really speaks to your daughters as well. But do you find that a lot of family matters and maybe even day job matters works their
Oh my
way
gosh.
into your writing?
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah.
I do child protection defense work, and so I'm representing parents who have had their children removed from their care, and I'm also representing children who have been removed from the care of their parents. And I call that work my heart work, um, because it can be challenging at times, emotionally challenging at times. It requires that I often take time out for self-care. Um, and then when I'm doing that, in the course of doing that, like I love to hike. I live right along, Dauphin is right along the Riding Mountain National Park. And so there's about 55 kilometers of trail. And when I'm doing self-care, I find myself in the bush, just hiking along the trails. And when I'm doing that, I'm thinking, and I'm decompressing. And in the course of doing that is when, I often will find ideas or stories that I think are, important to tell. And so sometimes that comes out in a song. Sometimes I release that song. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just a story that I think I need to get out.
Yeah, great process of just kind of excavating, right?
Yeah,
To find something deeper.
that's right. Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned hiking, because I was I you seen that I actually spoke with Mimi Obansawin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her music, and she also lives off the land and forages and things like that. And I'd come across a video on your Instagram where you're out looking for mushrooms, and I was like, mushrooms, okay, like that's one thing to find. And then near the end of the video, you're like, and we found some wild asparagus.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
that's just out there. See,
Yeah.
I'm just outside of Toronto. We're not we're not quite
Yeah.
we're not in the city. We're in the suburbs, but there's cornfields. So when I saw wild asparagus, I was like, man, that's cool. I kind of deviated from your story, your songwriting
Yeah.
moment there, but I thought that's cool. Like, they just kind of to have that sort of nature and those things kind of living around you. And as you mentioned as well, tonight we're eating off the land. So
Yeah.
even that has just got to be so just inspiring as well, just in some way.
Oh, like in all ways. My husband and I were just talking about this the other day, that, we're pretty urban, like we live in a town of about 8,500 people. But a conversation that we've been having around our dinner table more and more frequently is the topic of food sovereignty. And, understanding, I've been a carnivore my whole life. And about 6 to 8 years ago, I went vegetarian for 2 years. For a variety of reasons, which we won't get into here. But, I'm not vegetarian anymore. But one of the things that has, I guess, emerged from that experiment, if you want to call it that, is the idea of food, not the idea, is the importance of food sovereignty and the importance of understanding, where our food comes from, and that, just not walking through life with blinders on about how we access food and even how we consume food, And so I recently purchased a 20 gauge shotgun, and we've been taking our kids out duck hunting and goose hunting, and just understanding that, like, we're getting a little bit deep here on the food topic.
That's okay.
Talking to my kids about, when you're taking the life of a being, of a creature, that's something sacred, that animal is giving their life for you to survive. And, and so, like, we've taken our daughters out chicken hunting, and I've got a video of that on my Instagram, which was taken down on TikTok, by the way, for violating community standards for being too violent. But you can find hamburger eating contests galore.
Okay.
So
yep.
Yeah, the irony, right?
Yes. No, I totally get it. Totally.
Yeah. And so, like, I grew up, fishing. Like, we fish every summer and every winter. And again, that conversation with our daughters is happening while we're processing our food, that, this fish literally gave its life so that we can survive. And this year I took it one step further. I used to grow a garden, but I'm so busy that I just don't have the time anymore.
Yeah.
So this year I made a priority to plant 2 little garden boxes. They're like 6x2, just because, I want to talk to my kids about, growing your own food and being able to sustain yourselves if you need to. I don't know if that's an extension of just like my Cree ancestry or how I was raised, but I just think it's really cool that, we can literally, from a seed, plant something and nurture it and watch it grow and then sustain ourselves. So that's been a real big topic of conversation in my home in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Well, I feel like, we've gotten away from that. I think we've gotten away from that for many, many years. But, when I start thinking about that, it's not even like a thought to do your own thing. You think you try and, I know that there's people around where we live that kind of have their own gardens and things like that, but we're in this go mindset, with the kids now, and obviously work and everything, right? That we just got to make things work. So when you have the opportunity to be, in that situation with your kids, or not even situation, that the lifestyle, to be able to pass that along. I mean, yeah, not only, I'm sure, are you passing on what you've learned, and it's probably really cool to take what you've known growing up or learned growing up and giving on to your children, but it really is like the way that we should all be thinking, like how can we get to that point of our own somewhat sustainability, because like I get strawberries that are just ginormous.
Yes.
You're like,
I know
what's going on
like
here,
the size of my head,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, like, should we be eating this? Like, I know we want them to eat fruit. I know we want them to eat well, but this seems a little bit much. And then and then to your point, like about like game hunting, or sorry, would you call it game hunting, or is that not game?
Goose and deer would be like goose and duck would be waterfowl. Yeah.
Waterfowl. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. I shot a partridge once for us to eat.
Yeah.
Wow, that was I saw that video of the one that you were hunting, and I was like, wow, you just went and it was I'm like, I stood there for like 30 seconds because I'm not sure if this is gonna work. But what a process, to go through and just it's your own, right?
Yeah.
And that's something really cool to pass on to your kids. And you think that's going to be something they kind of carry with them?
I hope so. I mean, this year we've gotten my oldest daughter involved in like processing the birds, and so she's plucking the feathers and digging in to remove the guts and stuff. And when you talk about it, it sounds kind of gross, but that's how food works,
Yes,
And
exactly.
so I want to raise. I have 2 daughters. They're 11 and 9, and I want my girls to understand where their food comes from, but I also don't want them to grimace at the sight of, if you're consuming meat, think about, where is that coming from? How is it processed? And how are you accessing it? And so yeah, so like we've gotten her into, she's my older sister, is more, she's more self-sustaining than I am. Let me put
Okay.
it that way.
Right.
And
Okay.
so her husband was walking my girl through, how to process a bird, and I just thought that was really cool, and she did it for the first time this year, so it was
Uh,
kind of neat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it is different when you're like you're doing it and you think about it in the terms of survival as well. And Adrian Sutherland is another artist who's actually really cool to follow on social media because he's from James Bay area and
Right.
he shows a lot of his hunting and those kinds of experiences as well,
Hmm.
which has been it's just it's interesting because it's like it's real. That's the way life
Hmm.
has been, and it still is. But when you're not thinking about that, you're just kind of like, I used to get my meat and everything from the grocery store,
Right.
and it is what it is. And so it's cool and something I think that has to kind of you've got to think about trying to get back in some way to doing our own thing, if you will,
Yeah.
the less
Yeah.
technical terminology, our own
Yeah.
thing.
Or even just
Yeah.
being aware, even just being aware and being mindful about,
Hmm.
how food gets to your table. It doesn't just magically show up in a grocery store, you
I
know?
know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so guilty of that thinking. I'm so guilty. It is just like it's
I think we all are.
anyway.
I think we all are. I wouldn't say like don't let the guilt consume you, but just, when you have a moment to think about it, just give it a thought, and
That's right. Give
yeah.
it yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so off of that,
That was a big sidetrack. That was a big sidetrack. I
I,
like that.
I, yeah, me too. That was awesome. Again, it's so cool to see that. Well, you've been all over the place talking about this album,
Yeah.
and it came out in February, near the end of February, and this. So that's how I know. And we can talk through some of the songs here because I got some thoughts on a few, well, not thoughts, but I'd love to just touch on a few of them. But that's how I know is the latest single. It came out May 12th. Talk to me about what it's been like getting out there and really spreading the message and not only just like the song, but of you and your music and everything that's behind it.
Oh my gosh. Like practically, what is it like?
Yeah, or just like how does it make you feel? Yeah, I guess. Well, yes,
Okay.
practically. What do you
Okay.
go through, and then mentally, how does it? Is it you talk like on some TikToks you're saying like this is what I've dreamed of, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of like coming to fruition here. So all of the feelings, Desiree, all of the
Okay.
feelings, I guess.
Okay. Well, okay. So there's a few things.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the spirit of honesty,
Yes.
um, I've been exhausted.
I don't
uh,
blame you.
yeah. I mean, okay. So 2 weeks ago, I went to Toronto, or was it 2 weeks ago? No, it was like it'll be 2 weeks this Sunday. So I
Okay.
flew. I flew to Toronto. So I live in Dauphin, which is 4 hours north of Winnipeg. So if I'm accessing any airport, I got to go 4 hours.
To
So
Winnipeg, fly from there.
yes, right.
Wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I wake up on Sunday morning. I make my family breakfast because I want to do, my last breakfast with them before I jet
Yeah.
off to Toronto. So we have breakfast, and then I get in my car. I drive to Winnipeg. I had a few errands to run in the city. My flight was leaving at just after 5, so I get to the airport about 3:30 in the afternoon, and I land in Toronto shortly after 8. Um, I go and pick up my rental car. By the time the rental company was really delayed, so by the time I'm done grabbing my rental car, it's like 9:30. And then I had to head downtown to go meet with Leslie Hampton because she was styling me for some of the media stuff that I was doing. So by the time I get downtown, it's about 10 o'clock. By the time we're done styling, it's about 11 o'clock at night, p.m. By the time I get to my condo in Etobicoke, it is like 11:30 p.m. I still have to unpack, shower, wash my hair that hadn't been washed in a week so that I could get ready for hair and makeup that was coming at 4:30 in the morning. So by the time I go to bed, it's like 1:30 in the morning. Hair and makeup is at my condo at 4:30. 3 hours sleep. We're running on like major national media stations. And so I say that because, outwardly, if you look at my social media, you see like this girl who has been working consistently in music, and now some things are starting to happen. But it doesn't just happen. Like, you're running like, and there were 2 nights while I was in Toronto from Sunday to Friday. There were 2 nights that week where I got 3 hours sleep.
And then you got to be ready, right? You got to be mentally into it, right? Then you got to get out there, and you have to like be ready to answer questions, and like it's not just
right.
Yeah.
And so I say that not in the, not to feel sorry for myself. Like, I love what I do. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. But I say that because there's a lot of glamour and over glamorization associated with the arts and with, and the hustle, if you want to call it that. But it can honestly be exhausting. And so I got home from Toronto on Friday. I went to my cottage with my family, and I literally laid on the couch all weekend just to recover, from the crazy week. And, and then this week I've been in and out of, online stuff, which is fine. At least I don't have to drive anywhere. I can do this right from, my home office or whatever. But yeah, so I say that because I want to be honest about, the type of work that goes into, living out your dreams, so to speak. But on the flip end of it, and I try and remind myself about this, is that like, I've been doing this for over 25 years. And, if you'd have asked me when I was, in my early 20s, what I would have saw for myself in terms of what my career would have looked like, it would have looked very different. I would have been like, a headlining act in country music for the women. I would have been playing the biggest festivals. I would have been, touring with some of the biggest names in Canadian country. That was the vision that I had for myself. And of course, none of that came to fruition. But what I have been able to do is carve out this little tiny lane for myself that I've got my blinders on. I'm staying in my lane, and I'm working, and I'm making a living doing what I love to do. And so for me, being able to, we talked about food earlier, being able to put food on my table for my family, and doing that from an income, from a job that doesn't feel like a job. Like, some days I don't feel like I work even, because I absolutely love what I do. I love the creative process. And I love talking with people. And I think that, something that I feel has been really heartwarming for me is being able to, share a message of hope and resilience in the media that sometimes is often not heard, I think, especially, this month is Indigenous History Month. And I think that a lot of the time the focus is on trauma for Indigenous people. And I've been really trying to intently and intentionally shift that focus to one that is more focused on resurgence and resilience and brilliance of Indigenous people. Because if we look right across this country, there are so many incredible Indigenous people doing amazing things. And, so I think that the role that I have to play now, I see it as, of course, being one where I get to share my music, but also being one where I get to share, my story in that context.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's no saying I mean, maybe it's not your goal now, but there's no saying you're still not going to be up there, either headlining or opening for some of the biggest names in country. And I think some of that is also another realization. You said you've been doing this for 25 years, and had you done TV interviews prior to this? Had you done a lot of press in this way? I know that you had the Junos that you went to, but have you experienced this type of press and type of attention on previous releases?
No. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't. No,
so
it's been.
It takes time, And
it's
right.
And consistency and
yes.
Showing up and all of the above. And I think also, if I listen back to my 2010 album versus this album, there's a noticeable difference in terms of just my artistic development. you know, and I think if I had to tell a young artist coming up, I would say, don't waste your money recording shit songs. You
Yeah.
know, like I listen back to that album, like, holy shit, like those songs should have never seen the light of day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so but what is kind of cool is that I literally have created a public record of my development.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of neat. You know, I don't think there's any shame in that.
Right.
It's just an expensive lesson learned.
Yeah, absolutely. This is gonna, and I don't want to take anything away from here, but I had a lot of fun listening to Soulback Jack. I just have to say that I thought you did some really fun country songs. I actually thought like the top three, like first three, like it just wanted to say that. I did want to say that.
Right.
Actually, I really did enjoy it. Obviously, we hold ourselves to a bit of a different standard, so maybe I should have kept that to myself. But you just listening to your evolution was or just your progression has been really cool.
Yeah.
And even between your previous album Break the Chain and this one, That's How I Know, is like there's you see the bit of a, yeah, it's country, but I feel like you've done something a little different still, you know, with this album in comparison, and it's interesting. I was just watching a video on YouTube, obviously, with these two guys were talking about quality over quantity, and how quantity is greater than quality, but you're kind of like, no, like it's all about quality, and you're like, yeah, but you need quantity to get to quality.
Right.
So would you agree with that? And like when you think about the album, you know, like when you think about 2010 to 2023, do you feel like, yes, I know you're like that album shouldn't have seen the light of day, but did you need that album, and did you feel like you need these albums for that to get to through the quantity to get to where you feel like is quality?
No. I mean, I think that I could have done that development behind closed doors.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, like I think that if I were advising or helping to develop an emerging artist, I would say write as many songs as you possibly can. You know,
Yeah.
like I don't even know how many songs I've written. It's definitely in the hundreds, maybe even surpassed 1,000.
Yeah.
But do that. Write every day.
Yeah.
Write as much as you possibly can, and don't invest a single dime on production and marketing until you know that, you know, you've evolved enough that it's worthy of being shared. Because, you know, I know what it's like. You write a song and you're so pumped. You're like, oh my God, listen to this it's like a new kid. And you're, you know, your dopamine and all these feel good chemicals are going in your brain, and you're like, oh, you got to listen to this. It's the best thing ever. And then, and I do this. I'm still guilty of this. And my husband, God love him, he is so brutally honest with me. And my sister's another one where they'll be like, I don't know, Des, like, really? Like, this is nothing really to be excited about. You know, but I'll do that every single time I'm done a write. Like, oh, I'm really excited about this one. You guys got to hear this one. You got to hear it. And I'll be, you know, if I'm in Toronto doing a write or Nashville doing a write, and I'll text them the voice note, and then they'll listen and they'll be like, well.
At least they're honest.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah.
Because that could be the issue too, right? Is like, like sometimes people champion you too hard. And I love my parents. They champion like everything I do.
Yes.
And like to the point where I have to be like, awesome, maybe I should take a second listen or a second look. So that's great that you have, you know, they champion you in a different way, in a way that's like, well, Desiree, we know what you're capable of. We know what you can do. Yeah.
Better luck next time.
Yeah. I wanted to leave that to you. So yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And I, you know, I'm really thankful for that, because it's easy to get, you know, the best way I can describe it is like, you know, if you're sitting around a bonfire and you watch the flames and the sparks go up in the air, and it's easy to get up there, you know, but something needs to sometimes bring you back down to earth.
Yeah.
And so, they're good at doing that.
That's awesome. How often are you sending them voice notes? Is it like pretty frequent? Are you like kind of like, is something always coming up every day, or you like every week?
No. Yeah. Like I would say maybe every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I finish something where I think it's, you know, maybe worthy of sharing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, with the rest of this album, the rest of sorry, I didn't mean to put it that way, but with a lot of like the songs and kind of listening through this album, there's a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
There's some great ups with Wouldn't That Be Fun, which is totally fun. I was almost thinking like I meant what I said would be a great like wedding song too. Like I think people could listen to that and make that sort of like their first dance song
Yeah.
as well. And then, there's Love You to Death, which is still a love song, but in a completely different form. And I want to touch on that one. I know you touch on it a lot, but I think what a really interesting thing is that the song is called Love You to Death. So initially you see the title of it and you go, oh, you're going to love somebody to death. But then
Right.
you listen to the song and it's I can't love you to death. I know you've touched on this a little bit on other interviews. I think it's kind of an important piece to talk about. Do you mind just touching on this song one
Yeah.
more time as well?
Of course. Yeah, so I was watching the show Intervention on A&E about, I don't know, four years ago or so. And one of the family members, if listeners are familiar with the show, basically what they do is they confront family members or loved ones who are afflicted with addiction and are struggling with addiction. And so in the course of this confrontation, one of the family members read a letter to their loved one, and they ended it by saying, I can't love you to death. And I jotted that down and I thought, man, like normally we say, I love you to death. Like you said, normally that would be how you would talk to somebody. I'm going to love you to death. And I just thought that was really profound. And at the time that I was watching that show, I was personally struggling with loving somebody who was suffering with an addiction. And their addiction was impacting my well-being in terms of their behaviors, in terms of, their conduct and their access to me. And so I really had to make a difficult decision to impose boundaries on that person and to set rules about how I was going to allow them to access me. And shortly after doing that, I had just connected with a fellow named Steve Mitchell, who is based out of Vancouver Island. And I, told him about my story, and I told him about, this story in particular. And then I said, I have this song idea called Love You to Death. And Steve and I had never met before. And this is one of the beautiful things I think that comes out of songwriting is you share some of your most innermost thoughts, and you have to be so vulnerable with that person and intimate in the sense of, opening yourself up to the person that you're collaborating with. And for whatever reason, I just, Steve and I did this over Zoom. We've never met in person. And for whatever reason, he just felt like a safe person for me to share this story with. And so I gave him all of the details, all of the details about who it was that I was struggling with and the things that this person would do to interrupt my well-being. And, in the course of having that discussion, he said, let's write it. Like, I think this is, I think this is something we can dig into. I had some verses and a bit of a chorus, a half-baked chorus, already written. And so we kind of took from that and some of the ideas that I'd already jotted down and turned into this song. And then, of course, like these kinds of stories aren't told in mainstream country anymore. I mean, they used to be, if you listen back to, the 70s and 80s, 60s, music in this genre. But recently, I mean, it's all tailgates and beer and drink your face off, and it's, alcohol is very glamorized. And because of that, like, there was the artist side of me, my artist brain saying, this is a really important story that needs to be told and hasn't been told necessarily, in a mainstream way for a long time. But then the business side of me is like, Des, this is a very serious topic. And, is country radio going to be open to playing this? And you need radio to make a living.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's decisions that like that internal conflict that happens, I think, almost with every release, that, do I release this because I really want to and because I believe in it, or do I, do I release what I know will do better commercially? And then I was listening to a podcast that Charles Kelly was on, and he was talking about his own personal struggle with addiction. And he had recently released a single about his struggle with alcohol. And I thought, well, if that conversation is happening at that level, at the level of Lady A, then why can't this conversation happen at my level? And listening to that story is what inspired me to release this song. And it's to date my second highest streaming song ever in my career. Yeah.
You're right. It's a totally important song. And obviously the streaming has been there, but has there been any other kind of messages to you with regards to the song, or is anybody has
Yeah.
been kind of a reaction or connection as well that people are making just
Yeah.
because of the song? Yeah.
Big time. I've had, there have been multiple comments on my YouTube channel about it, and I've had people DMing me on Instagram and DMing me on Messenger, telling like really personal stories and about their own struggles loving someone with an addiction. And I think that that's really special, that you can that people feel a connection to you on that level, to share those kinds of intimate stories and details about their own lives and their own struggles, just purely because of something that you created.
That's amazing. Absolutely. Sometimes that's just what they need. Sometimes just that extra, that listen, that song, that next step, and can help get them to another, maybe even level of acceptance as well. So wouldn't that be fun? I'd mentioned as well as another, we kind of lighten things up a little bit here with Dave Wazaloo.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the question in this song. Wouldn't that be fun? What's the what's behind the phrase and the title of the song?
Okay, so that track was about enjoying the newness of falling in love, like the feeling of falling, and the anticipation of what a life might be like with that person. And we had actually written a whole different chorus. That song had started off being called "And Then Some."
Cool.
Yeah. And then we completely rewrote it, and it turned into "Wouldn't That Be Fun?" And in the course of talking that through, I remember saying to Dave, like, "Wouldn't that be fun?" I say that all the time. Like,
that's awesome.
and we were saying, we were talking about, like, if you're in a brand new relationship with somebody, or maybe you feel like you're crossing that line where you're falling in love with somebody, at least I would imagine you would think, I've been with my husband for 25 years, so
okay,
the feeling of newness is like, I'm way past that.
Long gone.
Yeah, long gone. We try and recreate it every now and again, but yeah. So I would imagine that new feeling, if you were falling in love with somebody, you would probably say, like, "Hey, I'd love to go to this concert, next month. Wouldn't that be fun?" Or,
yeah.
"I'd love to go see the Eiffel Tower one day. Wouldn't that be fun?" And we were just trying to make that, like, more conversational.
That's awesome.
In that sense, yeah.
That is a ton. And it is a ton of fun. I get a little dolly in your voice in this song.
Oh yeah, I've been told that a lot, surprisingly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because
okay.
But I also have
like
a raspy, like, deep voice sometimes. But every now and again, this little, like, fluttery thing comes out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's perfect. I think it works perfect. I think it worked perfect with Dave, and I just I thought it was a really great, I don't know, inflection throughout the song that you had that just felt like it just, I don't know, picked it up a bit and really suited the recording.
Fantastic. That was the goal.
That was the goal. Oh yeah. Awesome. So you did mention it is Indigenous History Month. We just had Indigenous Peoples Day. I try, certainly do much as I can to educate myself on a daily basis and monthly basis, and just outside of a month like this. And you mentioned, trying to look at this month as something, not necessarily looking at the trauma, but looking at, how do we, again, celebrate and, look at the positives as well. That being said, you're also Downie Wenjack ambassador, which is a great organization here that really obviously champions the indigenous community. Can you tell me about your role with Downie Wenjack? And because they did some great stuff yesterday. They always do something great, either during this month or during Indigenous Peoples Day, where they really do a great job of that. Like let's highlight and celebrate, Indigenous people and culture and things like that. What does it mean for you to be a Downie Wenjack ambassador?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that really drew me to that foundation is the idea of reconciliation as opposed to
Yeah,
reconciliation.
yeah,
And I think that that's where I feel in my heart we need to be moving. We need to be sitting in and moving forward with is the action part of reconciliation. And and I think that can occur in a myriad of ways. Like we could, I tell people all the time, pick up a book, go and grab a book by an Indigenous artist for, 15, $20, $25. You can learn so much from that. Buy an album by an Indigenous artist, download an album. Attend a powwow, attend a community celebration, attend a feast. These things are not hard to find in any, whether you're urban or rural. Um, yeah, just try and learn something. There's one thing that I'm loving right now is the what I'm seeing, and when I say celebrating Indigenous brilliance, you know, I obviously defer automatically. My brain defers to the arts community. But one thing that I'm loving right now that I'm seeing is the emergence of Indigenous economy. And businesses that we're seeing, online businesses, and even storefronts that we're seeing um, of creators. I think of my friend, I'm going to name drop her because she's incredible, Destiny Seymour from Indigo Arrows, and the interior designs that she has, and, just beautiful work. And yeah, and these companies are not hard to find. So I think that there's a lot of celebrating to be done when you're actively seeking out Indigenous entrepreneurs as well.
yeah. There's a company, Decolonial Clothing Company, that I've been following for a few years now, and not only do they provide awesome clothing and meaningful clothing and designs, but they provide a place also for education as well. It's like
Right,
you can go there, you can follow them, and you can get more than just, hey, buy this t-shirt, right? They
right.
really try and provide an education, and I think that's awesome to see as well. With a lot of it, you said, just businesses
Hmm.
in that, to do more than just selling. Like, you want to support them, you want to,
Right.
purchase what they have, but I think it's awesome they got more as well. Again, just think they look at it as like, hey, why don't we tell you a little bit more about
Yeah.
the design or why we're doing what we're doing.
That's super cool. That's one of the things that I love about arts. And I think if folks want to celebrate in a really, at a micro level, download
Hmm.
an album from an Indigenous artist. You'll be amazed at
Yeah,
what you can learn.
yeah,
I think about Break the Chain. You mentioned that earlier, and I played that song coast to coast right across Canada, and I can't even tell you the number of times that I had people come up to me after a live show and talk to me about being an intergenerational survivor. And I think that, what music can do is really put a human face to, um, you know, to this issue, to reconciliation. And I've played this song in some more conservative provinces in this country, and have been sometimes unpleasantly, but mostly pleasantly surprised with the response that I've received from people. And I think that, art can really serve as a building block, to building bridges between each other in society. And yeah, so I think that that's one really small way. If there's one thing that anybody can do, it's, buy a book, buy a piece of artwork from somebody, yeah, from an Indigenous artist.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's awesome. Completely agree. Um, if that means anything coming from me, I'm not sure if it does, but I just like, I'm totally like, I just like, yeah, like it's that simple. Actually Twin Flames have had on the show as well back when they released their album. They just a fantastic couple as well that really within their music, as you do, you know, just tell the stories that really give you a perspective, give you something to, you know, again, educate yourself with. So,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
just to think about. I always find it amazing when, and that could be with anything. I mean, whether it's a bias that I hold personally, or just a way of thinking that has always been ingrained in me. I always find it so enlightening when I can have a conversation or when I can read something that challenges my own
Yeah.
way of thinking and makes me think about something differently. And, I think if as human beings, we tend to be so rigid in the way that we think, in the way that we access or process information. But I think if we try and just have a little inkling of openness, um, and that's what I think is so beautiful about poetry, about art, is that, it allows sometimes for people to open themselves up in ways that maybe they wouldn't have ordinarily been willing to.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I feel like that's probably the part that scares them the most is like if
Hmm.
I open myself up, I'm going to discover something that I believed one way, right? I think that was the
Right.
biggest thing that really shocked the country, right? When all the news came out. I mean, you know, you mentioned you're an intergenerational survivor as well. You've got, you know, your grandmother went to residential school, your
Yeah,
father went to a day school,
that's
so
right.
you've seen this, you've heard about this for a lot longer than the country has, you know, the world has. And I think that was just the one thing, you know, that just really rocked people was just this thing that they all, I know it rocked me, you know, it was really tough to celebrate Canada Day that
Hmm.
year, you know. Again, whatever that means coming from me, but it was tough because, you
Yeah,
know, you believed one thing for so long, you celebrated something for so long, and then this happened. I feel like that's probably the one reason why people are afraid to be more open. But I think
yeah,
that, you know, you mentioned the arts and the music, and even just looking at businesses, the way that they're thriving
yeah.
is a great way to say, oh, okay, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to click that link, to visit that profile, to listen to that song, read that book, and start my journey.
One of the things that I think is so incredible about, the resurgence that we're seeing and the emergence of Indigenous economy is that, people like myself are first generation survivors.
Hmm.
We were raised by people who were not taught how to parent.
Wow.
And when I think about, you know, the success stories that we're seeing, that's coming from people who are literally coming from the ashes. And to me, indigenous or not, how can you not see the brilliance in that? And I think about, we think about intergenerational. Whenever anybody says intergenerational, it's usually followed with trauma, right? We always think about intergenerational trauma. We never think about intergenerational wealth and how, the inability for my grandmother who attended residential school to, uh, you know, she was born in the 30s. She couldn't hire a lawyer until 1951, and when we think about um, the inability of my grandparents to, uh, you know, own a farm or to be educated in a way that is safe, and then to just 2 generations later have a daughter who's a lawyer or have a granddaughter who's a lawyer. I mean, it's miraculous when I really think about it. And conversely, when I think about my best friend who's non-indigenous and the ability of her family to farm and to acquire wealth and to build up wealth, and the intergenerational wealth that she's going to acquire as a result of her family history,
Yep.
opposite to mine.
Yeah.
But I think and that's just the reality. Like I'm not saying
Yes.
I'm not saying this to be controversial. This is just the
No.
reality that we're living with here,
Exactly.
and it's a fact. And so, I think that those are things that when I see the success stories of Indigenous people across this country, it really feels like the best resilience that, or the best thing, I guess, that speaks to our resilience.
What is next? What are you working on now? I hear you're working on like an Americana album. Is that in the works? Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if I'm leaving behind mainstream country, but I just feel like over the last few years that this has kind of been what I've been writing.
Cool.
And there was a song that I put out a couple years ago called 45. I co-wrote that with Steve Mitchell as well. And we wrote that right after George Floyd was murdered in the States and Trump was the president. And so 45 was kind of the first Roots Americana thing that I'd ever really dug into. And the song is called 45 because, of course, Trump was the 45th president. And we wrote that song as a metaphor between a Colt 45 and the president of the United States of America. And, I feel like there's so much more creative liberties in terms of lyrical content in Roots Americana. And I just feel like I'm at an age now and a stage in my career where I still have a lot to say. And some of that can't be said within the parameters of mainstream country music.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Cool. Well,
yeah.
That's good. That must feel a little like refreshing as well. To just maybe
it feels liberating, but also,
I was going to say liberating,
also a little bit scary. If I'm being honest, a little bit scary because I feel like I've done so much work in this genre to kind of, develop myself as an artist. And now suddenly I'm just like taking off this hat and going to put on a different hat and go and introduce myself to a whole new market. So hopefully they like me.
I don't think they're going to have any problems with that. That's awesome. Well, I know it's sort of, as a musician, it's sort of like what's coming next, but it's cool to look forward to that. But in the meantime, that's how I know it is an incredible country album. It has like so many great songs front to back. So you're at least departing for now with a great piece of music for your country audience.
Thank you. That was the goal. I wanted to go out in the best way that I could. If this is the last piece that I share in this market, then so be it. I can leave with my head held high and walk into the next door.
I think you'll be doing this for a long time, Desiree. As long as Willie, 90 years old, still playing.
Wouldn't that be incredible? Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun?
Would that? Look at that. Amazing. And on that note, Desiree, thank you so much for taking the time, talking food, being so open about, your indigeneity and your music, and joining me on the Release Day Series podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Alex.
You can discover more podcast episodes as well as our limited video series on our website, www.releasedayseries.com. And if you'd like to support the show, we've added that option to the website as well. Send us $1, $3, $5, whatever you'd like. Any support helps. But most importantly, we appreciate you listening and sharing the podcast.